The galaxy had not seen war in more than 400 years. From the burning edge of the Orion Arm to the crystal cities of the Vega Cluster, peace was no longer just a hope. It was a way of life. Fleets still existed, but their silver hulls were polished for parades, not for battle. Soldiers trained with ceremonial weapons, ships drifted under half-power. The High Council of the Galactic Alliance spent more time debating trade routes than military readiness. To most citizens, war was something found only in history scrolls, as distant as the birth of the stars themselves. But peace, no matter how long it lasts, is always more fragile than it seems. The first sign came from the most unlikely place, a remote mining station orbiting the dark frozen moon of Tellerone. The station was small, with only 40 crew members, and its days were slow and quiet. Then, without warning, the station's automated distress beacon screamed across the subspace channels. The transmission was messy, fractured, and filled with static. Untrembling voice cut through the noise. Unidentified vessel. Moving. At impossible speed, it's not answering hails. Shields up. Shields. And then silence. No explosion. No fade-out. Just an abrupt end, as if the station had been erased from existence. At first, the High Council assumed it was a technical fault, or perhaps a pirate raid. But the miners were deep inside Alliance space, far from any known raider territory. A patrol cruiser, the Velnary Star, was sent to investigate. The cruiser's captain reported entering the Tellerone 9 system, scanning for life and detecting a single ship moving toward them. He began a standard hailing procedure. 47 seconds later, the Velnary Star vanished from all communication networks. No distress call, out no signal. The cruiser's transponder simply blinked out by the end of the cycle. Rumors had spread like wildfire across the capital's crystal corridors. Whispers spoke of a small, dark vessel that moved like nothing they had ever seen, some claimed. It used jump technology between single breaths. Others said it did not use weapons at all, that it simply tore ships apart with invisible force. The Council, concerned about the growing panic, ordered the information classified. Only the highest-ranking military officers were given access to the recovered fragments of sensor data. In the secure war chamber of the Alliance's Defense Command, the Council gathered. Holographic screens filled the room with blue light. They replayed the final visual frame from the Velnary Star's recording. In the middle of the image, cutting through the blackness of space, was a single warship unlike any the Alliance had on record. Its black armor absorbing nearly all light, as if it were carved from the void itself. Across its hull, in pale white letters, was a name none of them recognized. USSS Vengeance. The name meant nothing to most in the room. But the historian seated in the corner shifted uncomfortably. His species-long memory stirred at the sight of those letters. But before he could speak, the Supreme Commander leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the ship's silhouette. Its size is smaller than a standard destroyer, she noted. Yet the cruiser's readings registered power output higher than our entire capital fleet. Her voice was calm, but her hands gripped the table. Who builds a ship like that? The room fell silent. No one answered. The historian's mind was already racing through dusty archives of a war most of the galaxy had tried to forget. A war where a single world had stood alone against the chaos of the stars and won. But that world Earth had vanished from. The galactic stage centuries ago, sealing its borders and refusing all contact. The name on the ship's hull was like a ghost from that era, a whisper from the shadows. More reports began to arrive. A merchant convoy traveling through Sector A-19 had crossed paths with the Black Warship. They sent a friendly hail. The warship ignored them and passed without incident. Hours later, a defense outpost in the same sector reported the destruction of a small Alliance picket ship. The timeline was impossible. No known vessel could have traveled between those points so quickly. By now, even the Council could feel it. A tension in the air as though the galaxy itself was holding its breath. They had no idea what this ship wanted or why it had entered Alliance space. But one thing was certain. It was not lost, and it was not aimless. Every movement seemed deliberate, every encounter purposeful. In the darkened chamber, the Supreme Commander turned away from the hologram and faced her generals. "I want everything we have on Earth," she ordered. "Now." The historian's eyes flicked up, knowing this was the beginning of something far larger than the Council could imagine. The Vengeance was not simply a ship. It was a message. And whatever that message was, it had arrived in the heart of a galaxy that believed itself safe, far across the void, beyond the reach of their sensors. The USS Vengeance moved with quiet precision. Its engines burned with a deep, steady light, not rushing, not chasing, but coming. And as it crossed each silent system, worlds that had never known fear began to feel it for the first time in centuries. The black warship did not rush. It moved through the galaxy like a shadow sliding across the stars, silent, unshaken, and unstoppable. It never answered hails, never sent warnings, never showed a single sign of fear. And yet every time another vessel tried to stand in its way, the result was the same. Total silence from the defenders. And nothing left behind but fragments of debris, scattered like dust in the solar wind at first. The High Council believed the encounters were isolated, random chance putting ships in the Vengeance's path. But soon, a chilling pattern emerged. The warship's route was direct, almost like a blade cutting through the map of Alliance territory. It passed through populated systems without attacking civilians, ignoring space stations and trade ships. It destroyed only those who challenged it, as if proving a point that no one could stop it in the Dranthus Belt. 3 light years from the capital, an Alliance blockade was assembled, the largest military force deployed in over a century. 15 war cruisers, 8 missile frigates, and a wall of heavy drone carriers waited for the Vengeance in the empty space between 2 suns. The commanders were confident. Their ships had the best weapons the galaxy could offer. They expected a hard fight, but they believed their numbers alone would overwhelm the intruder. The Vengeance dropped out of warp at the very edge of the blockade. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. The alien commanders hailed the ship, demanding it stop and submit to inspection. The Vengeance made no reply. Its black hole remained still, absorbing the light from the nearby suns until it looked like a hole cut in the universe itself. Then, without warning, the warship moved. Not fast instant. One heartbeat, it was hundreds of kilometers away. Next, it was inside the blockade, sliding between enemy cruisers as if their formations were made of mist. Invisible energy rippled from its hull, and every targeting system in the blockade failed at once. Drones spun helplessly, missiles refused to lock, and shield generators collapsed. The Vengeance opened fire. Not with beams or plasma, but with thin streaks of light that cut through entire warships in a single shot. Some explosions came instantly, others were delayed by seconds, as if the ship's weapons sliced through metal and crew before the victims even realized they had been hit. In less than 2 minutes, the great blockade was gone. The warship slowed, drifted for a moment among the burning wreckage, and then jumped to warp again, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. Across the galaxy, fear began to spread faster than news. Civilians spoke in hushed voices about the black ship that could not be stopped. Traders whispered about its weapons, claiming it could pierce any armor and move faster than light without a jump gate. Some swore it had no crew at all, that it was an ancient machine, a ghost from a forgotten war. Others believed it carried only one human aboard, a commander so dangerous that even the galaxy's most powerful fleets could not touch him in the capital. The High Council met again, their voices sharp and desperate. Every system it passed brought the Vengeance closer to the heart of Alliance space. Some argued for total evacuation of the central worlds. Others demanded a final stand with the entire fleet. But there were calmer voices, to those who saw a strange pattern in the warship's behavior. It did not attack civilians, did not destroy stations or planets. It struck only when challenged, and even then, it struck with precise, measured force. This was not a rampage, it was a demonstration. The historian who had recognized the name on the hull finally spoke openly. In a voice that carried across the chamber, he told the story of Earth, not the quiet trade-friendly Earth of recent centuries. But the warrior world of the Great Galactic War, 300 years ago? He explained Earth had stood alone against a coalition of star empires that sought to control its resources. The fighting had been brutal. Every empire had underestimated humanity's capacity for invention, adaptation, and sheer will to survive. Earth had developed weapons and ships so advanced they seemed impossible to the rest of the galaxy. In the end, the coalition was shattered, its fleets burned, and Earth simply withdrew. It closed its borders, cut off all contact, and erased itself from the galaxy's political map. Maybe, the historian said, the vengeance is there. A way of reminding us they still exist. But if it was a reminder, the message was terrifying. The Council realized something grim. If this was only one warship, and it could cut through their fleets without effort, what would happen if Earth had more? Out in the cold between the stars, the vengeance slowed again. Its black hole reflected nothing. Inside, its systems hummed with quiet efficiency. A single coded transmission left the ship, moving faster than light toward the Alliance's capital. It was short, only one sentence long, but it carried a weight that could crush an empire. Do not test our patience. The message reached the capital before news of the blockade's destruction arrived. When the two pieces of information came together, the meaning was clear. The vengeance was not here to talk. It was here to warn, and yet, deep within the council chambers, no one could agree on the same question. Was this warning a chance for peace, or the first step toward the end of everything they knew? Far from the arguments and fear, the warship continued its straight path toward the center of the Alliance. It was not fast enough to be running. It was not slow enough to be wasting time. It was moving with the certainty of a predator that knew nothing could stand in its way. Somewhere, hidden in the darkness, Earth was watching. And for the first time in 4 centuries, the galaxy remembered what fear tasted like. The news of the blockade's destruction reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. What had once been whispers in back alleys and private comms now became the leading story on every public network.
Ow!
The name Vengeance was spoken with equal parts awe and dread. Some claimed it was invincible. Others claimed it was not even real, that it was a holographic trick or a weapon disguised as a ship. But no theory explained the facts. Fleets had been erased, and no weapon in the Alliance's vast arsenal had even scratched the warship's hull. In the High Council's war chamber, the historian known as Varen sat alone, staring at a still image of the black ship. His mind drifted through centuries of dusty records, names, and dates that most of the galaxy had chosen to forget. The warship was not just a weapon, it was a signature. Humanity had built ships like this before, but they had been sealed away, their blueprints buried after the Great Galactic War. Varen finally addressed the council. You all know Earth as a quiet trade world, he began, his voice steady but heavy with meaning. You know them for small shipments of technology, rare art, and the occasional cultural exchange. But that is not the Earth that existed 300 years ago. That Earth was a fortress, a predator among prey. The chamber fell silent. The Supreme Commander leaned forward. Explain. Varen began to speak of the war that history had smoothed into a single paragraph in Alliance textbooks. In truth, it had been the bloodiest conflict the galaxy had ever seen. A coalition of 6 great powers had sought to claim Earth's resources. They had sent fleets larger than moons, armies that could strip a planet bare in days. The humans, outnumbered 100 to 1, should have surrendered. Instead, they fought back with weapons the galaxy had never seen, weapons that bent the laws of physics. Warships that could vanish from one battlefield and appear in another before the enemy even realized they were gone. Earth's commanders had not simply defended their worlds. They had hunted. They studied their enemies, learned their weaknesses, and struck without mercy. Entire fleets disappeared without a trace. Planets that served as enemy supply lines were rendered uninhabitable overnight. By the war's end, the coalition no longer existed. Its member empires were broken, scattered, and too afraid to rebuild. And then, without warning, Earth had withdrawn from the stars. No one knows why they left, Varen said. Some believe they were tired of war. Others think they had learned something about the galaxy, something they didn't want to share, but whatever the reason, they vanished. And now, he gestured to the black warship on the screen. Now they've returned. The council erupted into argument. Some members dismissed the historian's story as myth. Others demanded immediate peace talks before the Vengeance reached the capital. The military faction refused, claiming any attempt to negotiate would show weakness. The Supreme Commander remained quiet, watching the ship's image as if it might suddenly speak out among the stars. The Vengeance pressed on. It entered the Hellion Rift, a dangerous expanse of space where navigation was nearly impossible. Most ships avoided the rift entirely, but the warship moved through it with perfect precision, as if its pilot had traveled the route 100 times before. Scanners from a distant observation post caught a brief glimpse of it and something else. For less than 3 seconds, 2 other ships appeared beside it. Then, as if they had never been there, they vanished into the darkness. The observation post sent the data to the capital. Analysts studied the readings and came to a terrifying conclusion. The other ships matched the Vengeance in size, power, and design. This was not a lone vessel. It was part of something larger. Varen was summoned again. When shown the scans, his expression hardened. Titan class, he said. That's what they called them. Each one was built to fight an entire enemy fleet alone. If we've seen 3, there are more, many more. The Council's fear deepened. If Earth truly possessed a fleet of Titan-class ships, the Alliance's combined military strength would be meaningless. Yet there was still no sign of open war. The Vengeance destroyed only those who attacked it. Every system it passed remained untouched otherwise. It was like a predator walking calmly through a herd, striking only the animals. Foolish enough to challenge it? The Supreme Commander called for an emergency meeting of all military leaders. They reviewed every possible tactic. Massed fleet assaults, planetary defense grids, even theoretical superweapons. But none offered more than a faint chance of success. The commander finally asked the question no one wanted to answer. If this is just the beginning, what will the end look like? No one spoke. Far from the capital, deep inside the Vengeance, the crew, or perhaps only a single human, sat in the command chair, watching the stars slide by. A holographic display floated above the controls, showing the Alliance's capital growing closer with every jump. No enemy ships pursued now. The message had been delivered in every destroyed fleet and failed blockade, and yet the warship kept moving. Its mission was not over. In the capital's lower districts, civilians began to panic, despite the Council's attempts at control. Rumors swirled that Earth's return meant the galaxy would be reshaped, that whole planets would be forced under human rule. Others believed this was revenge for something the Alliance had done long ago. Only Varen seemed to sense the deeper truth. As he left the war chamber that night, he muttered to himself, "This isn't conquest, it's judgment." The Vengeance emerged from the Hellion Rift on the edge of the Traven system, just 3 jumps from the Alliance's heart. It slowed, almost as if it wanted the capital to see it coming. And across the galaxy, every world in the Alliance began to wonder the same thing. When the black warship arrived, would it speak, or would it strike? The Vengeance entered the Traven system without resistance. No warships blocked its path, no drones circled in defense. The Alliance had learned by now that blockades only led to humiliation and loss. Instead, the High Council ordered every military vessel in the area to hold position at safe distance, their weapons cold, their crews silent. It was not a gesture of surrender, but a desperate attempt to avoid provoking the black warship. Still, the people of Traven watched in terror as the Vengeance slid past their main world. It did not turn toward the planet's gleaming cities or fire on its defense stations. It simply passed, a dark shadow gliding between the stars, silent and deliberate. Even at that distance, its presence was heavy, like a storm on the horizon, that everyone knew was coming, even if the first raindrop had yet to fall. On the capital world, the High Council gathered once more in the war chamber. The Supreme Commander stood before the holographic projection of the warship's route. The line of red markers destroyed fleets and vanished ships, stretched across half the galaxy, all leading toward one destination, the heart of the alliance. The commanders argued over their options, but the truth was clear to everyone. In the room, they had no defense. The historian Varen remained in his seat, watching in silence. His eyes flicked to the timer running on one of the displays. The Vengeance was less than a single day's travel away. He felt the weight of history pressing down on him, not the history in books, but the kind that lived in scars and unspoken memories. Then it happened. Every communication channel across the Alliance, military, civilian, encrypted, and public, went black for exactly 3 seconds. Then a signal appeared. It did not matter what frequency anyone was tuned to. The message forced itself into every receiver, every display, every holographic feed. The image was simple: the black warship floating in the void, motionless. No weapons fire, no dramatic movement, just the ship, as still as death. Then a voice spoke. It was human, deep and calm, with no trace of threat in its tone, yet the very lack of anger made it more frightening than any shouted warning. Cease all border expansions. You have 1 cycle. No other words followed. The screen went black. Communication channels returned to normal. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. The High Council stared at one another, frozen. The message was not a request. It was an order, one that carried the weight of absolute certainty. 1 cycle. No explanation. No negotiations. The council erupted in chaos. Some members demanded compliance, fearing what would happen if the deadline passed. Others argued that the alliance could not bow to a single ship, no matter how powerful. Military commanders spoke of mobilizing the full fleet, but even they did not sound convinced. Far from the chamber, in a hidden control room beneath the capital's central spire, the intelligence division reviewed new surveillance footage. A spy ship in deep space had risked everything to shadow the Vengeance. From a distance, its captain had remained cloaked and silent, following the black warship into uncharted territory before the message had been sent. What he recorded made the analyst's blood run cold in the footage. The Vengeance drifted alone for a time. Then, without warning, space itself rippled, and for a few seconds, the darkness behind it bloomed with light. Dozens of shapes emerged, their black hulls identical to the Vengeance. Titan-class warships, silent and waiting. Their formations stretched across the void like an army of shadows. Then, just as suddenly, they vanished back into whatever hidden place they had come from, leaving the Vengeance alone once more. When the footage reached the High Council, no one spoke for several long minutes. The Supreme Commander finally broke the silence. "If they wanted us gone," she said quietly, "we would already be gone." The historian nodded slowly. "This is not about what they can do. It's about what they want us to know they could do." The meaning was undeniable. The Vengeance had not given a warning because it feared retaliation. It had given a deadline because it was willing to allow the Alliance one last chance to avoid something far worse. As the cycle ticked away, the galaxy descended into a strange mixture of panic and paralysis. Civilians fled border worlds, fearing they might be the first to fall if the deadline was ignored. Entire planetary governments debated whether to obey Earth's command independently of the Council. Even some military officers quietly contacted human channels, offering information in exchange for safety. In the dark space between stars, the Vengeance waited. Made no moves toward the capital yet. Its engines were cold, its weapons silent. But to those who understood war, the waiting was more frightening than an immediate attack. It was the quiet before the blade fell. The council met again in the final hours of the cycle. The Supreme Commander looked around the table at faces drawn and tired. "We have 3 choices," she said. "Comply and lose face. Refuse and face. Extinction or stall and hope they will listen." The historian's voice was almost a whisper. "They are not here to talk." Far beyond the capital, in the endless dark, the Vengeance's engines flared once more. The countdown was almost over. The final hours of the cycle passed like the slow drip of water in a silent room. Every clock in the capital ticked toward the deadline. The black warship was close now, only 1 jump from the heart of the Alliance. It had not changed course. had not spoken again, simply kept coming. The High Council remained locked in debate. Some worlds had already begun dismantling border stations, hoping to prove their compliance before the deadline. Others saw this as weakness and accused the Council of surrendering without a fight. Military leaders stayed in constant contact with their fleets, keeping them at alert but ordering them to hold position. The official stance was clear. No ship was to engage the Vengeance under any circumstances. But not everyone agreed. Admiral Torvin Dask, commander of the Third Strike Fleet, had fought his whole life to defend the Alliance. He had never known war on this scale, but he had grown up on stories of past victories, of heroes who stood against impossible odds. To him, the idea of bowing to a single ship, no matter how dangerous, was unthinkable. In his private chambers, aboard his flagship Iron Saber, Dask watched the silent footage of the Vengeance again and again. Each time, his jaw tightened. He saw not an unstoppable force, but a challenge that no one else dared face. The Admiral called his officers to the command deck. "We intercept in 1 hour," he said flatly. "We strike before it reaches the capital." His second-in-command hesitated. "Sir, the Council's orders." Dask cut him off. "Council is paralyzed. We will do what they cannot. History will remember us." The Third Strike Fleet moved quietly, using deep space channels to avoid detection. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 missile frigates, and a swarm of automated attack drones formed up in attack formation along the Vengeance's projected path. Dask planned to concentrate at first strike, overwhelming fire from every direction, meant to destroy the warship. In the opening seconds, when the Vengeance dropped out of warp, the trap closed. Dask's voice thundered across the fleet's comms. "Fire everything." Dozens of missiles streaked through space. Beams of concentrated plasma lit up the void. The attack drones swarmed, each one armed with warheads designed to breach planetary shields. The combined firepower of the fleet roared toward the black warship and vanished. Not a single shot struck home. The space around the Vengeance shimmered, rippling like water. Missiles curved away as if pulled by an unseen current. Plasma beams scattered into harmless bursts of light. The drones went dark mid-flight, their systems wiped clean in an instant. Then the Vengeance moved. It did not open fire with the furious hail of destruction Dask had expected. Instead, it slid forward, weaving through the fleet like a shadow. Silent and precise. One by one, Alliance ships went dark. Entire vessels lost power, their lights fading, their weapons cold. In less than a minute, the Third Strike Fleet hung dead in space, helpless. The Admiral's flagship was the last. Vengeance drifted alongside it, so close Dask could see the smooth black armor through the viewports. A deep vibration rolled through the hull of the Iron Saber. Every screen on the bridge went black, replaced by a single line of human text. One cycle left, and then the Vengeance was gone, not moving away, simply no longer there. Back in the capital, the Council received the report with grim silence. There was no wreckage, no casualties. Every ship from the Third Strike Fleet was still intact, drifting in the void, powerless but unharmed. It was a show of dominance so complete, it didn't need bloodshed. The Supreme Commander slammed her fist on the table. This is what happens when we act without thought. We are alive only because they choose to let us live. In the streets, however, the effect was far worse. People now understood that even their strongest fleets could not touch the black warship. Fear turned into despair. Border worlds began declaring loyalty to Earth without waiting for Council approval, hoping to be spared if war came. Protests erupted in the capital, some calling for surrender, others for total war. The unity of the Alliance was starting to crack. The historian Varen saw it clearly. This was not just a battle between ships. This was a psychological war, and Earth was winning without firing more than a handful of shots. Far from the political chaos, the Vengeance slowed in the cold space between systems. Its mission was almost complete. The deadline was hours away. In the command chair, as the lone human, or perhaps something more than human, watched the map of the galaxy and the faint glow of the Alliance's heart. When the next move came, it would be final. The final hours before the deadline were like the stillness before a storm. Across the galaxy, everyone, from the highest-ranking council member to the smallest child in a border settlement, knew the black warship was close. Markets were empty. Streets were silent. Ships that normally darted between trade routes stayed docked. Even the stars seemed colder, as if the universe itself was holding its breath in the High Council's war chamber. The Supreme Commander stood at the center table, hands pressed flat against its surface. Around her, the counselors watched the live feed, the Vengeance, one jump away from the capital. It was not rushing. Its engines glowed with steady, calm light, a predator's measured pace. The message had been clear. The time had almost run. Out, no one spoke. Even the sound of breathing felt too loud. When the final minute began, the chamber's lights dimmed without warning. Communications went silent. Every device, every screen, every network across the Alliance went dark. From military control hubs to personal wrist displays, the blackout lasted exactly 10 seconds. When the systems came back online, the Vengeance was there. It hung in low orbit above the capital world, motionless. No escorts. No fleets. Just a single black ship staring down at a planet of billions. A signal arrived. It was not routed through any known channel. It simply appeared on every screen and every projection across every world in the Alliance. The image was the same for everyone. The silhouette of the Vengeance against the planet's curve. And the same calm, steady human voice that had spoken before. You have forgotten what you did. The words were not shouted. They were quiet, almost weary. Yet in that quietness was a weight heavier than any threat. The voice continued. 3 centuries ago you came to our world. You burned our skies. You enslaved our people. You called it necessity. We called it survival. Images began to play behind the voice, not from Alliance archives, but from human records. Cities on Earth burning under alien bombardment, oceans filled with sinking ships, entire continents under occupation. Then came the images of humanities. Resistance, battered soldiers in makeshift armor, fleets rising from shipyards built in secret, battles fought in the cold dark where no quarter was given. You lost, the voice said, and you begged for peace. We gave it to you. We withdrew. We let you rebuild, hoping you would learn. The images shifted again. Recent footage now border worlds under Alliance expansion. Small civilizations being forced into treaties they did not want. Mining colonies stripped bare. But you have not learned. There was a pause. The silence was suffocating. We are not here to destroy you. Not yet. We are here to remind you that there are lines you do not cross. End your expansions. Leave the independent worlds untouched. You have one chance. The image of the Vengeance filled the screen again, its black hull like the shadow of death. If you force us to return in numbers, there will be nothing left to discuss. And just like that, the transmission ended. For several long moments, the galaxy was frozen. The High Council stared at the blank screens, each of them realizing the same thing. The warship could have destroyed their fleets, their stations, even the capital itself. But it didn't. The message was not empty. It was a warning backed by the power to erase them completely. On the capital streets, civilians began to murmur. Some saw it as mercy. Others saw it as domination. In the outer systems, planetary leaders rushed to halt expansion projects, fearing they would be the spark that brought the Titans back. Above the capital, the Vengeance began to move. Slowly it rose from orbit and turned away from the planet. Its engines flared, and it vanished into warp space without firing a single shot. But the fear it left behind remained in the war chamber. The Supreme Commander leaned back in her chair, staring at the empty spot in orbit where the warship had been. We've been given a second chance, she said quietly. I don't know if we deserve it. The historian Varen spoke for the first time since the message ended. It isn't about what we deserve, he said. It's about whether. We believe they'll come back. Far beyond Alliance space, in a place no map marked, the Vengeance joined a formation of black warships. Not dozens, but hundreds. Their hulls reflected nothing, their engines silent in the dark. They waited, patient as the void, for the day their orders might change. For now, the galaxy was spared. But the balance of power had shifted forever. Every world, every leader, every soldier now carried the same thought in the back of their mind. If Earth's fleet ever moves again, nothing will stop them.